I grew up as the middle child in a family of three boys. My older brother Scott had always been involved in Boy Scouts and eventually became an Eagle Scout. My younger brother joined briefly but quit after a short while. For some reason, my parents never pushed me to join, which always puzzled me. It was strange because I was always tagging along when Mom drove Scott to Pinwood Derby events, troop celebrations, and camping trips. Watching Scott prepare for those weekends in the wilderness was a mix of awe and jealousy. But the part I envied most wasn't the trophies or badges, it was the campouts. The thought of disappearing into the woods for a weekend with the troop felt magical to me, and I longed to be part of it. I remember going along for the drive once or twice, just to see the troop set up tents and start fires, but as I was too young and not a member, I was never allowed to stay. I'd go home, quietly frustrated. Scott would spend hours practicing pitching tents in the backyard before trips. He treated it like a serious mission. Watching him, I started dreaming of my own adventure, and one day when I was about 7 or 8, I decided to set up a tent in our backyard and camp out overnight. Our backyard was enormous and connected with the neighbors' yards in a way that made it feel like a shared forest. There were patches of trees and brush and very few fences. My parents helped set up a fire pit, and my little brother, only 4 at the time, joined us to roast marshmallows, but he wasn't allowed to sleep in the tent. Scott and I got into our sleeping bags and pulled out our Game Boy SPS. I was obsessed with Super Mario Bros. 2, playing it over and over. Eventually, tiredness overcame me and I tried to sleep, but sleeping in a bag on uneven ground was uncomfortable, and even though I was tired, I couldn't really rest. Hours passed. At some point, I must have drifted off because when I woke, the tent was dark and empty. Scott's sleeping bag was gone. I thought maybe he had gone inside the house because he couldn't sleep. Suddenly, I felt a pang of fear. Being alone in the tent wasn't something I had ever considered. Slowly, I unzipped the tent and peeked outside. That's when I saw him, a grown man sitting by the fire pit staring straight at the tent. My stomach sank. This wasn't Scott. I zipped the tent closed and froze. The man shifted slightly, and I noticed a shadow moving along the side of the tent. Then I saw a small gap at the bottom of the zipper that I hadn't noticed before. One eye was pressed against it, staring directly at me. I felt paralyzed. My first instinct was to scream, but nothing came out. The zipper moved an inch further, and I could feel the man's presence right outside. Finally, the terror overpowered me, and I screamed, kicking out of the sleeping bag and stumbling backward, hitting the tent poles. Footsteps rushed away across the yard. The back porch light clicked on, and my dad ran outside, but the man had vanished. The police came, but nothing was found in the surrounding area. Even weeks later, the sense of fear lingered. One day at school during recess, I noticed a man outside the fence. He looked directly at me and said, "Hey, you're Chris, right?" I froze. My heart raced. I lied, saying no. The man smiled and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" before disappearing. It had to be the same man from the backyard. My parents kept me under close watch for weeks, and the fear never left me. Years later, I moved away from Salem, Oregon, where I grew up. I bought my first house about 50 miles away. One summer, I found a Facebook Marketplace listing for a cream-colored sectional couch and a Cannondale mountain bike. I contacted the seller, a man named Jim, and arranged to pick it up later that night. The house was on the coast, accessible via a long dirt driveway through thick woods. When I arrived, I noticed a Mercury Sable parked outside, a car that didn't match the massive house at all. There was a note on the front door, "Doorbell broken, please use the back door." I obeyed and went around back, checking the windows as I went. Everything seemed normal, so I knocked on the sliding glass door. No answer. I waited, looked around at the ocean view, and tried contacting Jim on Messenger. Still nothing. As I walked back toward the house, I noticed that every window now had a person standing behind it. They didn't move. Their faces were all smiling. I froze. I ran to my car as quickly as I could and left. Later, I found out from the neighbor, Tom, that Jim had been out of town the entire week, and he would never stage something like that. Even the police confirmed that no one had broken in and the doors were all unlocked. But for me, the memory of those smiling faces staring at me from every window is something I'll never forget. Years later, I lived in Pennsylvania with my parents. One weekend they were out, so I decided to host a small pool party. As I was setting up, carrying tables and drinks, I heard a cough from the woods behind the pool house. It sounded deliberate, like someone trying to clear their throat. I froze. The woods should have been empty. I brushed it off, called a friend to help, and continued with the party. At around 2 a.m. After the party had ended and everyone had gone home, I heard splashing from the pool. Someone was swimming. I looked out the window and saw a man, tall and unfamiliar, calmly moving through the water. He climbed out, dripping wet, and walked straight toward the sliding door of the pool house. I knew I had locked it. The footsteps were slow and deliberate. He tried the door, rattling it multiple times, then knocked 3 slow times. I told him over the phone that the police were on the way, and after a pause he left. His wet footsteps retreated and the front door slammed shut. The man was never identified. No one else had stayed behind. Even now, thinking about how close he came and what might have happened if I had been slower, I still feel my chest tighten. The fear of those nights, the sense of being watched, and the terror of a stranger in my backyard is something I carry with me to this day. I'd always loved summer evenings, especially when my parents were out of town. They trusted me enough to host small gatherings at our house in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, but one particular weekend was about to become the most terrifying experience of my life. I had planned a mini pool party for a few friends, setting up folding tables, drinks, and a game of beer pong. The backyard was huge, with an in-ground pool, a pool house, and thick woods stretching far behind it. It was perfect for privacy and parties, normally. Earlier that day, the sky had been overcast, but as the party started, the clouds cleared slightly. Around 6 in the evening, I was arranging chairs near the pool and bringing out the last of the drinks when I heard a soft cough from the woods behind the pool house. At first, I thought it was one of my friends joking around, but it sounded deliberate, like someone trying to make their presence known without being seen. My stomach sank. The woods behind the pool house were deep and uninviting, and no one should have been there. I froze, holding a folding table in my hands, scanning the shadows between the trees. There was no movement, just the lingering sound of that throat-clearing cough. Every instinct screamed at me that something was off. I quickly put down the table and called my friend Mark, who was due to arrive early, to help me set up. I didn't mention the cough, pretending to be normal. He arrived shortly after, and we finished setting up, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. By 7 or 8, friends started showing up. There were about 20 of us, nothing wild, just swimming, music, and laughter. Lights illuminated the patio and pool area, and the woods seemed to fade into the background. I kept glancing toward them, half expecting to see someone, but they remained empty. I convinced myself it was just nerves. The party wound down around midnight. Most of my friends had left, and I started tidying up. I glanced one last time toward the woods. Everything looked normal. I locked the sliding door of the pool house and went upstairs, scrolling on my phone before bed. Around 2 a.m. I thought I heard splashing. My eyes snapped open. It wasn't a faint sound. It was unmistakably someone swimming in the deep end. I peeked out my bedroom window and saw a man swimming calmly across the pool. He didn't belong to any of the guests. I squinted, trying to recognize him. He was a stranger. Leaning closer, the pool lights illuminated his face just enough for me to see him clearly. I froze. The man swam to the shallow end, climbed out, dripping water onto the deck, and stood there, staring directly at the house. Instead of running, he walked with purpose toward the sliding door of the pool house. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause. His pace was deliberate, almost military-like. My hands shook uncontrollably. I whispered to myself, "This isn't real. It can't be real." I picked up my phone and called 911, whispering that there was an intruder in my backyard. I barely breathed as I described my location. Footsteps echoed behind me on the deck, slow, heavy, wet. Each step sounded on the wooden floor as he approached. He tried the sliding door. Locked. He rattled it, pushing harder each time, then knocked 3 slow, deliberate times. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. "Who is that?" I shouted through the phone, trying to sound braver than I felt. The voice that responded was calm, almost eerily composed. "It's me. Open the door." It was a man, likely in his S, speaking softly but with authority. I knew I didn't know him. I told him to leave and stayed on the phone with the 911 operator, who guided me to stay calm and keep him talking if possible. There was silence for several seconds, then his footsteps retreated. I heard the front door slam. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the pool house, and the surrounding woods. There was no sign of forced entry, and no one else was in the backyard. All the party guests confirmed they had left hours earlier. Yet, the trail of wet footprints on the wooden deck and the dripping water leading to my bedroom told me the intruder had been inside my property. Even months later, I couldn't shake the fear. Every time I saw the pool at night, my mind flashed back to the calm, deliberate way he had moved, the silence he had carried, and the feeling of being watched in my own home. The man was never identified, and no one knows how he got in, how he avoided detection, or why he chose me. That night taught me the terrifying truth. Even in familiar places, safety can vanish in an instant. I've always loved exploring old neighborhoods, especially at night when the streets are quiet and the only sounds are the wind and distant traffic. But one night in Salem, Oregon, I learned that some quiet streets hide secrets you don't want to uncover. I had recently bought my first house about 50 miles outside of Salem, A modest place I'd furnished with a mix of items from Facebook Marketplace, garage sales, and a few hand-me-downs from my parents. That summer, I was driving my Ford Raptor around, picking up furniture I'd bought online, including a cream-colored sectional couch and a Cannondale mountain bike. When listing caught my eye, it promised a lot of good-looking furniture for a very low price. I messaged the seller, and after a short negotiation, he agreed to a slightly lower price and asked me to pick it up later that evening. The address was along the coast, on a long driveway leading to a large property overlooking the Pacific. I figured it was a great opportunity: scenic drive, furniture in good condition, and maybe a little adventure. The closer I got to the coast, the nicer the homes became. Finally, I turned onto the seller's driveway, a long dirt path flanked by dense trees. 10 seconds in, the property opened into a massive clearing, with a large house sitting atop a slight incline. It looked like a millionaire's home, but parked in front was a beat-up old sedan, completely out of place. I parked nearby and approached the front door, ready to ring the bell, but a sticky note was taped to the door. Doorbell broken. Please use back door. Strange, but I followed the instructions. As I walked around the side of the house, I noticed every window had blinds tightly shut, giving the place an eerie, lifeless feel. I messaged the seller to let him know I'd arrived, but received no reply. I went to the backyard, which overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and decided to take a quick photo of the sunset. That's when I first noticed movement. At the windows I had passed earlier, I saw people. At least they looked like people, standing completely still, staring at me. My heart stopped. Every single window had someone at it, unmoving, silently observing. I froze, unsure if they were mannequins, statues, or actual humans. Then I realized I didn't see any reflection or sign of props. These were real people. Panic surged through me. I turned to retreat, but as I took a step back, I saw another figure appear at the previously closed blind on the side window. Now there were dozens, all staring, all smiling. The smile was too wide, too deliberate, and it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't wait to rationalize it. I ran back to the car, reversed down the driveway, never taking my eyes off the house. The front door opened and a man stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, watching me leave. I didn't stop to process, I just drove. After a few minutes, I turned into a neighbor's driveway and explained the situation. The neighbor, Tom, seemed shocked. He knew the owner, Jim, and confirmed he wasn't home that week. Together we called Jim, who was as baffled as we were. No one else was supposed to be there, and the description of the people at the windows matched no known neighbors or friends. The police were notified, but no one could explain how the figures appeared and disappeared, or how the intruder at the front porch never engaged me physically. Even after that night, I replayed the events in my mind. How did they appear so suddenly at every window? Were they trying to scare me, or was there a darker purpose? That night, the peaceful streets of Salem became a maze of shadows and smiles, each one a reminder that some dangers aren't loud and some threats don't chase, they wait. Weeks later, I would drive past the house again, cautiously keeping my eyes on the driveway. The property was empty, the blinds shut, and the sedan gone, but I still felt the weight of unseen eyes. I've never returned to that property alone, and I never will. That night taught me that sometimes curiosity isn't just dangerous, it can be deadly.